Representative Thierry is on her way, but we will get started shortly. Thank you all very much for coming this evening. My name is Adrian Ozuna. I'm the current president of the Sharpstown Democrats, and I'd like to welcome you all to Bayline Community Center. This is the first evening extra that we'll be having this year in 2019, and I would like to wish all of you a Happy New Year. In fact, I think New Year started today with Speaker Pelosi's election in the news. It is a brand new day. If we'd all stand, I'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get right to the program. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. I would like to thank State Senator Borris Miles for joining us this evening. State Representative Shawn Thierry for not joining us this evening. And once Representative Thierry arrives, we'll have her join the panel. I saw Judge Englehart walk in. Are there any other elected officials in the room? Okay. And there is Representative Thierry.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you for coming this evening. So what we're going to do is I have some policy areas I'm going to lead off and allow them to speak because they actually are, this is a legislative preview and they are going to tell us what's going to start happening next Monday. But I do have topic areas. You are allowed to submit questions written. So there are note cards in the back. We have pens also. Kara has them. So please write down your question and that way we can submit them to our panel that way. But first, what I wanted to start with is an overview. Like I said, we have a new Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States today. There was an election in November. Senator, I kind of want to start with you on this, with an overview of how things went in November and how things are going to go with Gene and Shawn giving us their assessment after that. Dan Patrick won in 2014 by 900,000 votes and a 20-point margin. But in November, he won by 400,000 and only a 4.5 margin. In 2014, he launched a very radical agenda with abortion, bathroom bills, and all kinds of other things. Do you think that margin shrinking that much is going to curtail that agenda?
Before I answer that question, let me say I'm honored to be here with my Sharpstown Democrats. So let me say that it's an honor to serve you as State Senator, Senator 13. Answer your question is absolutely. Okay? You should, absolutely. And you should know, before I get started, I'm happy to know that not just Nancy Pelosi is the new Speaker in the Congress, but my colleagues in the House to the left of me, they'll be getting a new Speaker. He's not a Democrat, but I'm looking forward to how y'all manipulate and work him. He's an old friend of mine, Dennis Bonham, but I found some interesting things he's done so far, and I'm going to answer your question, but I'm happy to see that y'all have got a new Speaker that's going to come a little bit further to the middle. He's hired some Democrats, some Democratic consultants on his staff. I've worked with him in the past. Gene, you know, and Shawn, you've learned that he's fair. He's a fair guy. He ain't speakercratic, but you're gonna have something to work with, and y'all's got to just do y'all's part. Getting back to your question, Dan Patrick, he's got trouble. Houston, we got a problem, and he's saying it every day. He ran, as you know, he ran 2 candidates against his Republicans. The leadership is getting weaker. He's gotten one senior member of the Senate that he ran opponent. He funded an opponent against him, and the gentleman won, and the senior member won. So he's going to come back and be a thorn in his side. We picked up 1 seat. We should have picked up 2, but Pete Gallegos, I don't know what happened there.
Never allowed to run again.
Say again?
Never allowed to run again.
Yeah, he's never allowed to run again. I agree with
It's like
that.
the third election.
And I won't send him no more money. But you're going to see a weakening of the Republican leadership and Dan Patrick in the Senate. I'm excited about going back. I've already dropped over 30 pieces of legislation in the coffers, dealing with flood control. I'm sure y'all are interested in some of those bills I've dropped. Some predatory lending issues, tax-free holiday for teachers. Think about that for a second. Teachers buy a lot of school supplies for the kids in their classrooms now. Shouldn't they have a tax-free day? Okay? And give them a little break. That's a little personal one for me. I got some hate crime reporting bills, TDCJ ombudsman that you and I worked with last when I was in the House, Gene. So women's health care, of course. Repeal for predatory DRP programs. And let me explain that one to you. And I've also dropped the straight party voting ticket back in the coffers. Okay? I'm looking for any one of y'all in the house to pick it up. I'm sure y'all filed your own versions of it, so we'll be winding it down as we always do. And then the one I dropped today, I see a majority of women in the room. The one I dropped today, the state of California passed a bill that any corporation that was housed and homed in the state of California had to have a woman on the board by state law. I'm going to shake the Senate up with that bill that we dropped today. I'm very proud of it. I've got, like I said, we've already dropped. Now go ahead, please. And I gotta be honest, I've got a very, very good friend. He's been my finance chair since I got started. Mr. Theldon Branch back there. Stand up, Theldon. Theldon is the one who brought me the idea for the California bill, and we got it put in the coffers today. Look, answer directly to your question, yeah, Patrick's got a problem. The entire Texas regime, leadership, Republican in Texas has got a problem. The things we did this past November, and we got to we can't give enough thanks to Beto O'Rourke for putting himself out there. And not Beto, Harris County, Dallas County, San Antonio, and Austin wouldn't have been as blue as they are. I believe, and this is my personal opinion, y'all know I'm opinionated, if we'd have had a stronger ticket statewide, from governor to lieutenant governor to attorney general, we could have made a bigger change in Texas. But that's okay. We've learned from it. Now we know what to do. Yes, the Senate in the 86th legislative session will not be as poisonous to us as it was in the 85th and 84th.
Okay, on that note, to Representative Thierry and Representative Wu, the election in November cut the Republican majority in half, from 24 to 12, and there were some people who won by 47 votes here in Harris County, so they're hanging on by a thread. What is the atmosphere going into the House this session?
Ladies first.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's really a pleasure to be here and see so many familiar faces. We've had a lot of internal meetings within the House with our Democratic caucus, lots of conference calls, and honestly, I think the atmosphere is we're feeling really good. We know that we have 12 more voices out there. It's not 95-55 anymore. We're not in the majority, but that's 12 more strong voices to shift. And every now and again, we've seen that depending on the piece of legislation, we're able to peel off some Republicans. So I think on issues such as criminal justice reform, there are opportunities for us in the House to really make a difference. We saw that last session. Believe it or not, some of the more libertarian people in the Republican caucus are in favor of a lot of those bills, and they're willing to sit down, you all, and talk with us and work with us on those bills. So I think it's going to be a very, very impactful session from the House. Speaking of Speaker-elect Bonin, he's said some things recently that I'm encouraged by, and this is not even from any standpoint of being naive or any of that, but he's putting himself out there. We all know that he doesn't want to be a one-term speaker, so he's making promises, and no pun intended, he's got miles to go before he sleeps. So he said things such as, when I go in the members' lounge, and this is just inside baseball for y'all, just kind of how things work out. He said, I don't want to see a table of only Republicans having lunch and a table of only Democrats having lunch. If I walk in and see that, I'm going to ask, why is that the case? Why aren't you guys sitting together? This isn't Congress, you know, where it's taboo to do that. So I'm encouraged by that. I'll talk about it a little later when it's my turn second time around, but I've got a lot of good pieces of legislation. I had big shoes to fill. I'm wearing pumps instead of boots. But I've got 32 pieces of legislation also that I've are in the coffers. About 18 of them are pre-filed. So I'm feeling really good about it. We'll be picking up and continuing on some issues. Senator Miles and I will be working on the slumlord bill that we had last session, specifically for something in this area. We almost got it through. We passed the House. We couldn't get a hearing in the Senate because there was so much bottlenecked. But I think this time around, we get out the gate quicker. We'll be able to do that. We've got pre-K. We've got so much I hope I get to share with you all today. And I think depending on, maternal mortality, big deal. FYI, you guys, Congress passed that little old bill that we got out of Texas. $60 million they put into it on the federal level. Can you believe that? So we are going to be protecting mothers here in Texas. So we've got that. School safety, school finance, and Rep. will talk more about this too. That, our marching orders, is our priority coming from the House. And I'm sure the Senate also.
Yeah, if I could just segue before you take over, Gene. The biggest issue in the Senate right now is that Senate Finance wants to fix public ed. That is the resounding cry in both chambers. Am I right, Gene? And I've heard it out of the mouth of directly from the governor when he visited here a couple of months ago, that we've got to fix public education. So it's a good thing. We're in a good place right now, and it's good to be able to know that our opposition is looking and wanting to do something about one of the biggest issues that we've been crying about for years, public ed.
On? All right. So I'll take a little different tact with this. I think Senator Miles and Representative Thierry has covered a lot of the stuff that I think that I could talk about. But so I've actually been asked this question before: is anything going to be different? And I actually really don't know the answer to that because one, I'm after being in the legislature for 3 terms, I'm a little bitter now, maybe a little jaded. And so my answer is well, it depends on whether the Republicans are capable of learning. And I'm not sure what the answer is to that, because I know for certain there were members who were not capable of learning. Representative Rinaldi in 2016 won by half a point. I mean, he won by half a point. And then he comes into the 2017 session and is the biggest a-hole on the floor, and then not only that, he's the guy who calls ICE on protesters and puts his giant target on his own back. When you won by a half a point? And it's I wouldn't do that. That's not very smart. That's not politically sensible in the least bit. And so, that's not everybody. I think a lot of members get it. Right now, there's about a half dozen other Republican members out there, mostly in the Dallas area, and a few here. Dwayne Bohack won by 47 votes, right? A tiny bit more effort, he would have lost. And so, you know, the Republicans have to be asking themselves, is the atmosphere going to be better in 2020? Is Trump going to be any less crazy in 2020? Right? And so you have to ask yourself, do they get this? And I'm sure some of them get it, but do enough of them get it where they say, like, look, every time we take a really divisive vote, like red meat vote that helps us in our primary, that's going to kill us in a general, that's a bad idea. Let's stop doing those. Let's stop taking those votes. Kill those in calendars, kill those in committee. So I don't know, and I think, you know, you're still going to see abortion bills, because don't forget, we picked up 12 seats, but we're still 9 short of the majority. If an abortion bill gets on the floor, that is a check mark vote. They're still going to vote on it, because there's no point in going through the general election if you can't win the primary. And there are going to still be other things like that. But I'm really, really hopeful that because Democrats have picked up so many seats, that we can actually now focus on like those things that really matter, like school finance, like CPS, additional CPS reform, like doing Harvey funding. There's a whole bunch of other, like serious criminal justice reform, tackling marijuana, and the effects of that stuff. So, anyways, I'm hopeful, but maybe a little bit pessimistic.
And let me back on that. I think Gene's absolutely correct. There's going to be Republican business as usual. Dues check off probably won't pass this time, unfortunately. I don't think the bathroom bill, I know Bonnet doesn't want to see the bathroom bill, and if Bonnet doesn't want to see it, there's no sense of Patrick bringing it up. He's just going to embarrass himself. But the highlight of the day, it's going to be business as usual as Republicans, but the highlight of the day, as Gene and Shawn has eloquently laid out, all the margins were tight. Those margins were tight because people are tired of seeing us go to Austin, come back home, school finance is not fixed, our criminal justice system is not fixed, we're not funding women's health properly, okay? There's some issues that aren't Republican or Democrat. School finance is not Republican or Democrat, okay? And I think they're finally getting to understand that our teachers' unions, our parents' organizations, they're sick and tired, and you all are sick and tired, your taxes going up, but we're slowly decreasing the amount that we spend for public ed. But yet your taxes are increasing. They've got to learn, they are learning, and Betancourt I think is going to lead, believe it or not, Betancourt is going to lead on a tax relief fund. At the same time, we finance school finance more. What's happened in the last 10 years, your taxes have gone up, but the amount of money the state puts in for public ed has gone down. Okay? So we are not properly funding the schools. The formula that we are using in the state of Texas to fund these schools is broken. Point blank. They realize that now, thanks to you. You've made your voice heard, and now they realize this ain't a Republican issue, this ain't a Democratic issue, it's a people issue. And if we don't provide proper workforce for our state, we can't be the great state of Texas anymore. Okay? People are going to go to other states because we don't have the workforce, the educated workforce, to work at Google, to work at these factories, okay? To run these oil companies. They figured it out, and they figured out that the way they were doing it is hurting the state of Texas. So I'm excited about going back and financing public ed properly.
I'm glad y'all been talking about education because that was my next question actually was to lead it off because you talked about the governor. Does the state of Texas believe in public education anymore? With the amount of attacks that have gone on, with the number of voucher bills that come up, the governor tweeting about HISD today and attacking that. So I know Democrats believe in a strong, robust education system, public education system. We'll start with Representative Wu.
I'll talk about that. I was on TV. did a film shoot with Senator Betancourt this morning, talking mostly about this issue. So one of the things that I think is maybe not different, but I think is really important this time, because we've done this in the past. During the interim, we did a school finance reform committee, a committee that was supposed to be nonpartisan, from including members of the Senate, members of the House, members of the Board of Education, to look at the school finance system, divided into 3 sections, talking about what should our goals be, what's wrong with our current system, and third is how to fix it. If you guys actually want to go look it up, it's just Google Texas School Finance Reform Committee. They've released their final report in December. It still says draft on it, but it's the final report. It actually has really good points, and Betancourt was the chair of one of those subcommittees, and I really can't disagree with a single thing that's on there. Because it's all talking about, look, this is about low-income kids. The future of the state is because the low-income families are growing at a far faster rate than wealthy suburban families. And we're not dealing with them, we're not treating them properly, we're not giving enough money to those schools where in those neighborhoods, we're not providing the right kind of support to those families. We're not providing pre-K that helps those kids get the proper footing they need to actually be good students. And the report recognizes all this and states it point blank. And the bad of it is, I think from my perspective, is that all this has already been known. Past committees looking at this problem have stated this before. 10 years. Yeah. And the difference, I think, this time, though, is there's much more focus on it, and people are actually paying attention to it. And I think there is actually more people looking at, like, hey, if this is really what they say we need to do, then what's the problem? And ultimately, the school finance reform really comes down to 2 things. One is reformulation. And I know Paul Betancourt and I have this big back and forth about undoing Robin Hood and all this stuff. That's great. I would love to undo Robin Hood, but the problem is Robin Hood exists because the courts made the state enforce the Constitution of the state. The Constitution says that the state of Texas is required by law to provide an adequate education and equal education to every child in the state, regardless of who they are and where they live. And Robin Hood was put into place to try to make that happen. And, you can't undo that without undoing the Texas Constitution or without recreating an entirely new system that is fair and equitable. And so, but without getting into like whether we can undo Robin Hood or not and fix all the things, the ultimate question comes in 2 parts. One is the state going to redo its formulas for places like the major cities, like Houston, where we're like my district, this district right here, the schools here are 97% free lunch. Yet we're giving money out, right, to other schools because of the formulas, because the way we have the formulas. There not enough weight is given to kids who come from tough neighborhoods. Okay, and then the second thing is the state going to put in a larger pot of money? Period. So in 2007, the legislature made a deal with the counties and school districts and said, like, look, we'll re-engineer the system and rebalance it out. And in 2007, the share between state and local was 50-50. And there's a federal share, but the federal share is always flat. It's always a proportional amount. It's always flat. So the share between state and local was 50-50. Right now, the share of the state is 32%.
Yep.
Guess who's carrying the rest of it? You. So the state needs to increase the total amount of money. All right, I spent too much time.
Ditto to everything he said, but I think the will is there. We have to see if we can actually get the ball in the end zone, if we'll go the distance. They've announced it. What Representative Wu talked about, those findings and recommendations, they came from the governor's office as well. So they've put it in writing and said, this is what we want. So it's really going to be up to us to hold everyone's feet to the fire, and this is it. yesterday I filed a bill and it got so much traction because this is what people are talking about, House Bill 612. It is to fully fund all-day pre-K. Now, it's not the whole kahuna, which is pre-K for every single person, but it's a natural extension because I believe, I've seen at this level, with the makeup that we have, you take your wins in increments, you throw it first down and keep on moving down the field until you get in the end zone. But this bill would fully fund pre-K for economically disadvantaged children. The same children right now, they're currently eligible for free lunch. Children of active and deployed service members, the homeless children. Right now, they can go to pre-K only half day. And I want to bring this one point up and hope we don't get lost on this. I think we'd be remiss if we don't talk about this before we leave. We're talking so much about school finance. I don't know how we can talk about how our children can get a first-class education if we don't talk about the fact that they can not even go to school and feel comfortable that they're going to be safe and not be shot. And so school safety has got to be a part of it. Rep. Lou and I attended a meeting, was it last week? It was right before the Christmas break. 2 weeks? 10 days, something like that. Greater Houston Partnership held a meeting, and Speaker-elect Dennis Bonnen was there. Your colleague, Senator Taylor, the chairman of public ed for the House, Chairman Huberty, was there, Representative Allen, we and myself, and we talked about that. I think Senator Taylor is going to be advancing a very, very large school safety bill. The governor has come out and said he's willing to put the money in. I've filed a bill for metal detectors in schools. I'm now the mother of a kid, a daughter, a kindergartner that goes to a public school, a wonderful school not too far from here. You guys, I tell you, I'm open about it. I love the school. It's amazing. Magnet school in HISD. She's in the gifted and talented program. I still feel sick to my stomach when I drop her off. I literally get in the car and I have to talk myself through it. I walk in and I'm looking at the entrances like it's something about to go down in here. It's an elementary school, but it's happened. So our middle schools, I will bring up one more point to drive home to make the point of how important this is. One of the schools in Senator Miles' district and mine, Worthing High School, about a month ago, a kid was caught with a 9mm in his backpack with 16 magazines. Okay, 16, in the class. 16 clips, magazine, however you call it. 16 bullets in a magazine. So, but, he brought a gun to school with 16 clips. So, 16 bullets. So, my point is, how did that happen? What would we have been the next Santa Fe? And then when I talked to some of the administrators there, guess what they told me off record? I'm going to be talking about this tonight on news. He said, I will tell you, in any given day at this school, 5, 10, 15 guns in backpacks every day. Now the difference is, in that inner city school, he didn't really come there to blow everybody away. He put that in there for his own protection, he said, in case something else happened to him outside of the campus with maybe a game or something. But the fact that we are comfortable when we walk in the Capitol, people walk through metal detectors. I have that protection, we have that protection. We go to airports and have that. Why are our most vulnerable population, they don't have that? The poor teachers don't have that. So I have to say school safety is going to be one of my priorities, whether it's metal detectors and metal wands. The governor has stated he's looking at, what that fiscal note would be, and since we're redoing the formulas, throw that in the pot. How can we learn when they're not in a safe environment? And I do believe in a decade, we're going to look back, and definitely in 2 decades, and say, remember when they didn't even have the metal detectors in schools? Like, our kids will be saying that. And I'll say, yeah, it wasn't like that when we were growing up. I remember when we were in the legislature, we were trying to get that through. And my daughter, hopefully Claire will say, what? That's crazy. And she likes to say, that's ridiculous. I hope she says that, because I want her to be safe.
Yeah, Shawn said it exactly right as far as funding pre-K. In the 84th legislative session, we opened up the 84th while I was in the House. Gene, if you remember, that was a top priority. We gained some yardage. We opened up in the 85th legislative session, last session, Shawn, you were in the House and I was in the Senate. We gained some more yardage on pre-K. I think it's, Shawn's absolutely correct. This session, we should go ahead and run the ball into the end zone. And I think that we have the climate now in both chambers that we can do that. I agree with you that school safety should be important. It's very important. But I want genuine concern for school safety and not media blast. The person who leads my chamber, you all know, came out, had a bunch of media, provided some metal detectors at some schools. And then,
Santa Fe, one school.
yeah, a school.
The one that.
And then we had an interim meeting. Then we had an interim meeting about school safety. And his first thing was, y'all find the money. You were on television, talking about how important it was. You ran out to Santa Fe when the TV cameras was rolling, and now you're gonna tell us to find the money? Who's the head of this chamber? So I think it's more sincere from the governor's mansion. I think it's sincere in y'all's chamber. I'm still questioning my chamber.
This is going to sound facetious, but it's not. Obama is not president anymore. Can we please get Medicaid expansion?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good statement. Great, fantastic statement. But I want you to know that your state returns $3 billion, refuses $3 billion every year on Medicaid, Medicaid expansion. Are we going to get in the state of Texas? I don't think so. Okay? I think as long as we have the bitter temperament of the Republican leadership that we have in this state, we can forget about ever getting an expansion of Medicaid, Medicare in this state. I want you to understand, how many years was Obama in office? 8. 8 times 3. That's how many billions of dollars we turned down. Answer your question is, as long as we have the leadership that's in place now, I don't believe so.
That's
I think the end issue is that the Republicans have not been sufficiently humbled yet. More people will have to lose, and people will have to come closer. I think one of the big problems is, Ted Cruz may have learned a small lesson. He only won by like 2 and change percent. Unfortunately, Greg Abbott won by 13%, so he feels very comfortable about his agenda and his mandate. So even if we could pass it out of the legislature, I foresee a veto. I think that we have a better shot of having Congress pass Medicaid for all before, it's Texas, man.
If there's any conversation, they are looking at the shift of the tide. It's turning more purple. I don't know how many of you all follow all the members in the House, but one of our more popular Freedom Caucus members, shortly after the primary, Representative Jeff Leach said, "Oh, you know what? I'm not in that anymore. I'm not a Freedom Caucus member. I'm just a regular Republican." So people are kind of jumping ship. If we do what we need to do in November and really make an impact, and if Trump goes the way that we think he's going to go, which is impeached or in a jail cell somewhere, then yes, you're going to see people, as Rep. Lou said, be sufficiently humbled and start saying, you know what, I got to play to the middle a little bit more.
I'll add this. One thing that 2018 that caught me by surprise was the increased focus on healthcare issues. I know that was really big for Democrats, but I didn't know that was really big for independents and moderates. And that is the sort of like the unknown variable, is that if that picks up more steam, that becomes a much bigger issue. If for some reason the Supreme Court affirms the Dallas court ruling striking down Obamacare, that could be a whole new game, because all of a sudden, even Republicans, who are going to lose their health care, all of a sudden go, maybe we do need to do something. So.
And to add to that, you all should play this very hard in your chamber. you have more rural members than we have in the Senate.
Yep.
And rural Texas
They're gonna get hammered.
are hurting because the hospitals can't afford to go and survive. These medical facilities can't go out and survive in rural Texas. So what I would say is y'all need to play on your rural members. You know, things are done in steps, as Shawn indicated with pre-K. We can start now and picking up some support from some rural members along with all the Democrats, because they're hurting in rural Texas.
Can I give a quick shout out? We had a new elected official just walk in.
Jeremy Brown.
So we have a judge.
Judge Jeremy Brown.
Y'all remember his
Little boy from Sunnyside, Texas.
And then senator, and now kind of commissioner's office, Rodney Ellis's office, and now he's judge. So I can't make fun of him anymore. Yes, I can.
And we have Trustee Villasecca.
Oh, yes. Say hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Switching just a little bit to elections. Will y'all push for online voter registration? Will you push for adding 2 optional early voting days so we can get that second weekend, that Saturday and Sunday? And do you think we can get them?
Yes and yes, yes.
Yes, yes. I also filed a bill which would provide for automatic voter registration for anyone enrolled in a public university or college. So hopefully we can go that way too. Whether we will have to see what's going to happen, so much is really hinging on this session. I'm happy that it's my second term. I wish you all had warned me, to Rep. Ruth's point, about how when things change, how the other side will then say, oh, you know what, that is a good idea. I didn't know that a lot of times Democrats push a good bill, and after it starts getting some traction, Republicans just take it and claim it and wave it and say, oh yeah, this is our idea. So you never know. I think it depends on if the majority party tends to think that those numbers may work. There was a time when they loved straight ticket voting.
Yes.
Right? And that didn't work out. Now all of a sudden they're like, no, we're going to eliminate straight ticket voting.
Republicans still do.
Yeah,
Yes.
so now.
And there's evidence that Cruz only won by the straight ticket voting.
So we really, it flips and it changes a lot. So yes, online voter registration, automatic enrollment, adding extra days. I even had a bill last session I filed. It did never get a hearing in the Transportation Committee, but they did do it in, to Mr. Branch's point, yours in California, where, you know how we see the Amber Alerts and all that on the traffic signs on the highways? It was going to be voter alert. And it had all that to remind people to go vote. We couldn't get that through. So anything that we can do to increase voter participation, I think all three of us are in support of.
My first session, actually, we Representative Borris, then Representative Borris and I actually both sat on elections. My first session, my vice chair did a fantastic job as vice chair, and during that first session, I think actually Chair Morrison carried the online voter registration bill. Republican. She's the Republican, a senior Republican chair. It's her bill. That bill did not come out of committee.
Wow.
Okay? So I'm a little bit more bitter and jaded about this stuff. So I think those bills, those are bills.
Gene, you gotta stop being jaded and moving, man. I'm just trying to take it personal, brother. You just gotta learn to work between the lines to get it done. So stop taking it personal. Don't bring it home.
I think the Republicans will do everything in their power to stop bills like online voter registration and expanding early voting because they see that as helping Democrats.
Yep.
It's not true. I mean, it's literally not true because around the nation, when they've done studies on online voter registration, it says people from both parties register more. It's equal. It doesn't make a difference. Same thing with early voting. It helps both sides, but the Republicans perceive it as benefiting Democrats, and that's why they've killed those bills again and again every single session. And I foresee them doing the same because I think they know their margins are even tighter next time around, and they will do everything in their power to cut. I mean, if it means disenfranchising one voter, they'll do it.
Moving to the next subject, and this has been brought up by, I think, more than one of you, cannabis reform. Will any bill from full decriminalization to a more robust medical marijuana make it to Abbott's desk?
I have one that I'd like to talk about for medical marijuana. I don't know if I don't believe, I'll just go out on a limb, which is really not much of a limb, that decriminalization will pass this time around in Texas. It's the way of the country is headed, it appears, but I think that's an absolute no. Negative, definitely not in Texas. They are lessening some of the penalties we've seen. With specific response to medical marijuana, I want to share just a little bit with you guys because it's a personal issue for me now. For those who don't know, so we had a bill, SB 339, that passed a couple sessions ago, which was the Compassionate Care Act. It allowed the use of cannabis oil, and in a very, very, very low degree for a very specific small class of patients. It was only for patients who have epileptic seizures. And it's a certain kind of epilepsy, and only certain neurologists can use it, and you can only get it a certain way. And in all these, I think 4 years now, they just did an article recently, and that there's very, very few people who've even benefited from it because there's a lot of hurdles to go through. But, like I said, there's an opening. There's a way to get in the end zone on this. One of the bills that I'm filing this session is to expand that class of people. Specifically, I think that the way we build this conversation is to start with what's not controversial. There are studies that I've read that say that cannabis oil actually is very helpful for pain management for hospice patients. So that is the bill that I'm filing. These are people that are receiving palliative care or hospice care, which means you've been given a diagnosis of 1 year or less to live, so you're terminal. And I'm going to be optimistic. I have to be. I'm with Senator Miles. It's the only way I can keep myself motivated.
We'll fix that.
No, I gotta go. I gotta keep going. I gotta believe. So, this is literally hospice patients, people who are dying, and instead of giving them opioids, we've seen that this is a form of treatment. So there's that bill. And then the other aspect that I said was a little personal, and I didn't put this in the bill because I didn't want to clog it up. I have a different one. If they don't like that, or maybe there's a way I can substitute or add an amendment, but to include that for patients with glaucoma. And we've seen that it's helpful for that. That runs in my family. My grandfather went blind at the age of 40 from glaucoma. He lived till he was 89. He never saw us. And my brother suffers from severe glaucoma, has lost sight completely in one eye, never smoked marijuana in his life, has now traveled to various states to have to get treatment for his eyes because he's had so many surgeries. And he would definitely benefit from this. I hope I don't end up having to take this. But so yes, so from the medical marijuana standpoint, please follow the bill that I'm following for hospice care and to probably expand the class from beyond hospice patients to potentially glaucoma patients.
Shawn, I'll carry that bill in the Senate if you'll include sickle cell.
Yes.
That's personal.
Yeah, it is.
Senator Mendez, my colleague out of San Antonio, former House member, very strong member in the Senate and in the House. On the very last day, he had a bill for medical marijuana. And they held it to the very last day so that he couldn't get a hearing, or debated on the floor, and the debate ended like this. And it was Senator Swartner that was over Health and Human Services, and I was on that committee. And I've got it documented in my office in Austin, and we have it on tape. He assured Senator Mendez that that bill will be one of the first bills that gets a hearing in the 86th legislative session. Because believe it or not, again, that's not a Republican Democratic issue.
It's really
That's
not.
a health issue.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You got pain and you want to relieve some of that pain. Texas has got to get into the new century and get on board with a whole lot of issues that are not Democratic and Republican. They're just human issues. I'm proud to hear that Senator Schwartz has told Senator Mendez that will be one of the first bills we hear in the 86th legislative session. I look forward to hearing it. I look forward to hearing yours. I look forward to adding sickle cell on yours. Again, as Shawn has said, one step at a time. It's like chipping away at a brick. You just got to keep hitting it, keep hitting it, and keep hitting it. And fortunately for you, you have 3 representatives up here that don't mind swinging at a brick. We don't mind taking that hammer. Okay? And we have the strength of that hammer. We have the strength behind that hammer because you allow us to have it. So I want to thank you for always supporting me. I'm sure I'm speaking for my other 2 colleagues here. We are allowed to go to Austin and do the things we do. And I can tell you, Gene, I've worked with him on the floor. He don't stop. Shawn has grown into the position and is very eloquent when she does her things. If you're ever in Austin, come hear her at the back mic. She's very good. She's learned very well. We're all proud of you. And I'm just that old crazy senator. And I ain't gonna stop there. But I love y'all. I must keep on being who I am. That's just all it is to it.
Senator, you had brought up earlier in your opening statement that you wanted to tackle payday lending. And Sharpstown Democrats will know that that is one of the things that I absolutely cannot abide. So
You can't abide.
yeah, payday lending is one of my
Your pet peeves.
Yes.
I understand, brother.
So
It is a, go ahead, you want to ask a question?
basically, are we going to be able to get them to tighten regulations, or are we going to be able to get them to stop rollovers? Are we going, what basically are you looking at?
Well,
Because you and I could probably have long conversations about this.
I'll tell you what SB 182, payday lending evidence of theft, requires payday lenders to actually have actual evidence of a consumer has committed theft or fraud before referring to the consumer.
This is a good one.
Yeah, before referring to the consumer. Usually the payday lender customer to the police, sheriff, or prosecutor. Currently, payday lenders can make criminal referrals by just accusing their customers of theft when the customer is not paid on
This is real bad.
the fine.
They're using.
Go ahead. That's the bill that I'm following.
Yeah, this is a story that like NerdWallet and some other financial magazines covered.
Right.
I'm not sure a lot of people other picked it up, but essentially a lot of furniture rental, wheel and tire rental. I didn't know you could rent tires.
Yes.
You can. Payday loans. They're using the DA's office as essentially debt collection. So if you rented from them or if you borrowed money from somebody and you can't pay it back, they said, oh no, they just stole it. And then they said, and they just have somebody come arrest you, and they'll drop the charges once you pay.
Yeah, if you're late, they report it. You're a criminal.
It's
They're looking for
obscene,
it.
and it's completely abhorrent to like the American ideal, because like we basically like fought England because of this issue.
One of the things we do have to add, I want to add to this point, is some transparency and looking into members that own those.
Well,
He's not there anymore.
More than one.
so understand, in the 84th legislative session, we had 3 people in the House that made their living on payday lenders. There was 3 of them. So the bill was defeated very quickly when we tried to put something in it. 2 of them are gone now. 2 of them are gone now. Just 1 of them now.
Who's left?
Elkins.
He's gone.
He's gone.
He got defeated.
Who?
John Rosenthal.
No, not Brother Bo. No, not Brother Bo. Not that I know of.
Yeah, so I think the single greatest barrier to passing payday loan, title loan, home loan, mortgage loan, all those predatory lending bills, the greatest impediment was Gary Elkins.
Yeah.
He owned like not only did he own like 10 stores, but he was like one of the worst actors in that business.
And he was in leadership in the House.
Yeah, and now he got defeated by John Rosenthal.
John Rosenthal.
I would take John to Texas Appleseed for some of the ideas on how to deal with some of that. But Elkins was probably the biggest. 'Cause
I remember my first session, Elkins killed one of my bills dealing with the cash, like, so if
You
you
never
want
forget your
pawn
first session,
shop?
who killed your bills. You never forget your first session, who killed your bills.
like if you pawn something, you have to present ID and
Dream about
and remember the store has to record who you are because in case you stole that stuff. But guess what? For cash for gold, you don't have to do that. So you can go pawn jewelry and go or get money for jewelry and gold and silver and stuff at a cash for gold place, and you don't have to show ID. And I just want to make it say the HPD wanted me to carry a bill that says, hey, if you put in stuff for cash for gold places, you got to show ID just the same as pawn shop. Gary Elkins helped kill that personally, and he told me in my face he did.
In addition to SB 182, I'm also filing SB 183, a defense of theft of services when renting to own.
Yeah.
Created to defense the criminal theft of services when accused is under a rent-to-own contract with the store accusing the customer of theft of services. So that's another one. I look forward to your support on that.
you mentioned also Harvey. So the General Land Office is supposed to disperse $1.1 billion to Harris County and $1.1 billion to the city of Houston for Harvey recovery. Is there anything the state ledge can do to make sure that the designated way that those funds are supposed to be spent will be spent? Because there's supposed to be an attached formula, 70-30 for affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera.
As I understand, that money is going to be distributed through the county. Is that correct? It's going to come through us and go to the county. Is that correct? So we will have to do our job as representatives and as a senator to make sure that we're communicating with our county commissioners to let them know where our designated areas and our needs are for our communities. Kind of like after the storm came in, I flew in Commissioner Sharp, who was over and physically brought him around to our communities in this area, on west part of the district, so he can understand the devastation and the needs. We are going to have to be diligent, along with you all, are going to have to be diligent in making sure our county commissioners understand the needs and the wants and what needs to happen in our community as far as that Harvey Relief Fund money is coming in. And then we're going to have to put pressure on our congressional people, because that's just the first wave of the money. We're going to need 3 times more than that in Harris County, okay? So we're going to have to make sure that we're all diligent in talking to our congressional people to make sure that we're getting the adequate funding for the Harvey Relief as it stands today. And since I've got the mic, I'm just going to release SB 179, Harris County Flood Control Task Force, establish Harris County Flood Control Task Force to comprehensively study the flood mitigation in Harris County. The Hobby School of Public Affairs and Cullen School of College of Engineering at the University of Houston shall provide the necessary staff and administration support for the task force. Passed this bill unanimously in the Senate last session. It died in the House. I think it's not going to die in the House or the Senate this session.
So the way that I wanted the state to play a role in this. Now, one of the things you have to understand is, granted, when there's $200 billion worth of damage, the only people who can come in and put a dent in that are the feds. Where the state can actually come in and make a big difference is this, and we didn't do this, is that all that federal funding comes with a local match. That means you cannot get, it's not just free money, you can't just ask for it and get it. You have to come up with anywhere between 10% of it all the way up to half of it, right? Depending on what bucket it comes out of. Remember we voted on bonds last year? That's what that was. That was voting for our local match. It was $3 billion. Some of it was a 9-to-1, some of it was a 2-to-1 match for different sources. What the state should have come in and done was provided a way especially for smaller counties to essentially borrow money to make their local match at next to no interest, like the way we did for the water fund. Because if you tell a small county your local match is $200,000, it might as well be $2 billion.
Yeah.
They can't swing that, and they don't have a AA+ rating on their bonds, so they can't afford it long term. So what the state should have done was we should have had a special session right after Harvey. Some money should have gone into immediate relief, but a lot of the money we should have prepared for when counties needed to say, like, hey, we need to borrow $100,000 to make our local match, and they could have saved a lot of money. Like if Harris County had that state support to back up the bonds, we could have borrowed less than $3 billion. We could have borrowed a lot less.
But the thought of the state of Texas and having a personal conversation with the governor is, you're Harris County. You got the money. Okay? Why should I go into my rainy day fund? Why should I try? I'm trying to balance the state budget now. I know it's raining, but it ain't raining enough for me to go into my rainy day fund. And that was the governor's consensus, this to Harris County. Now, Gene's right. If it would have happened in Waxahachie, Texas, I don't know, some small rural town, they may have gotten that consideration. But the majority of it was Harris County. And the governor's position was, y'all got the money. Fix your problem. Okay, but I agree with you. That's what should have happened. That's what we tried to push to him, but he wasn't here.
Before I go on to questions from the audience, I have one last little area. This is a federal issue, the 2020 census, and that is April 1st of next year. So many formulas on funding are based on population. I mean, so many. What are you three planning to do from your offices to make sure that the districts know that they need to fill out the census and be ready on April 1st, 2020 on Census Day?
I'll start on this because I'm actually one of the named plaintiffs on the Mauk and Aldef lawsuit that the court just quashed their motion for summary judgment and motion to dismiss, so it's going to head. And the judge just issued a ruling saying shutdown or no shutdown, we're headed to trial January 18th. They've not told me that I need to be there as a witness, so that's good. But basically, the state of Texas has never actively participated in the census period. As many other states do. Most other large states, the states contribute some amount of money. Texas has never done that. I don't foresee that changing. What I am doing at the local level is rallying our local community. I am going after Asian organizations and big Asian donors I'm asking people to donate specifically to make sure that we do not get an undercount. It's already happening in Trump White House. They have already essentially slow rolled the spending that's necessary to hire people, to get community workers out there. My biggest concern is they will basically just say well, we're going to cut the amount we're going to pay, native language speakers to go into communities. We're going to cut minority community outreach. We're going to cut outreach to these groups and that group, right? We as a local area, we can't protect the entire state, but we have to protect Houston. And one of the things that I'm going to ask y'all to do when the time gets closer is, you guys are going to help me raise money. You guys are going to help me go out and do stuff. So some of y'all are going to sign up as canvas workers. Some of y'all may be signing up as canvas workers and doing it for free.
Yep.
Okay? Because it's going to be that may be what it takes. That may be what it takes. This is like one of. After the legislative session is over, this is my next most serious issue because, and I was on the paper saying look, if they mess with this, we're screwed for 10 years.
Yep.
Yes, I wanted to just add, we've all been talking about this. My office and I were talking about it just last week because we got some phone calls from constituents actually asking about that. And so from our end, just specific to your question, most of you probably know I'm really big with using the tools that we have with social media. And so we've been sitting and talking about there's already a kind of a Be Counted national campaign. And so we looked at, from our office, a Make It Count campaign that we want to launch, hashtag Make It Count. And within my own district, with House District 146, to go to all of the different communities and launch our Make It Count initiative So very similar to what Representative said, we were going to be going to all of our civic clubs, our Democratic clubs, and doing that. And then also, you know, from our perspective, Senator Miles will tell you, you know, in the African American portion of our communities, you know, our churches play a big role. And I have been reaching out, talking to some of the larger churches with our constituents and that want to help and talk about letting to make sure they know that their parishioners fill out the census. So our Make It Count launch will be coming out around that time, and we will be working with all of you and with our faith leaders.
And you know, as everybody here knows, if we don't get the count right, then we're not going to get the proper federal funding from the government. And that's going to be a problem for us in the long run. My Senate District Office, I've already met with our 2 congressional members who take up the majority of Senate District 13. We've had a meeting. We are going to do, you know, we're going to be looking for monitors and surveyors to survey the surveyors. We're going to be raising money through the churches. I've already had this conversation with Jackson Lee and Al Green that we're going to have to be diligent because this count is going to be, like Gene said, very important to our communities as it relates to the federal dollars and the proper resources that comes into our districts. So, we're going to be working with the federal people because it's a federal issue. They've got the most control, but we're going to need all of you. Okay? We're going to need Sharpstown Dems to do their part. As it says, Gene said, when we call on you, I'm not going to ask for none of your money, but I am going to ask you for your resources and your energy, because we're going to have to watch over those census takers and make sure that the count comes out right. In addition to that, we got to make sure that no bills get filed that requires only counting people who are registered voters. There's been bills that have been floated around.
They've tried.
That they're only going to count registered voters.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. The people who are not ready, they don't want to count them. There's been rumors that they don't want to count people, the inmates that we have in our county jails. There's been rumors that they don't want to count, say again? Seniors, so particular seniors, they don't want to count. So we're going to have to watch over them, working with our congressional members, Gene, working with our congressional members, Shawn, because they have the fight and the bite that can go back to Washington and say, file. We can say it, but they got to bring it back to them. You understand what I'm saying? So we got to make sure we're working with our congressional members and working with the community. And we're just going to have to watch over the overwatchers.
This is from the audience, and there's 3 separate ones, but it kind of rolls into the same thing. Will someone carry a bill to remove criminal records from residents for 10 years or longer that were misdemeanors? Revise laws preventing professionals from renewing licenses if they default on student loans. And a bill to prohibit employers from discriminating against applicants with credit issues.
I like the third one a whole lot.
I like the first 2 a whole lot. So if you can give me those cards, I can see if we can get those turned into legislation. We'll take a look at them. And Gene has been very strong in the criminal justice in the judicial area. You know, everybody, each one of us has our own little areas that we work in. And not to take anything from Shawn, but Gene has been very diligent in working in judicial areas. So if you can share that card with the 2 of us, we can take a look at that one.
For the audience, all of the cards that are here that don't get asked, I'll put together for our representatives so that they get all the questions, and we'll get the information back out to y'all.
Yeah, especially on the first question, that's something I've been trying to work on for a while. So, if you guys remember Willie Horton? Yeah. So you're old enough, all right. So before Willie Horton, the state did about between 700 to 800 pardons a year, like 700 to 800 actual pardons, like you know, mom picked up a DBI or a shoplifting when she was 19 and she's 40 now, can we get this off her record? And they did a lot of stuff like that. After Willie Horton, the state pardoned between 7 or 8 people a year. Okay, so like a 100% drop, or 99% drop. So basically you have the Board of Pardons and Paroles, which basically does no pardons. So it's just board of paroles. So one of the things is politically difficult because like people don't want to take responsibility for it. And I've been thinking about maybe I'll talk to Senator Miles about it. That like doing a bill that says that we need to create a commission that does wholesale pardons. Like you know, dude, if it's a misdemeanor, it's been 10 years, you got nothing else, and you said you can prove you're a good person, you got a family, you got a job, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Let's get that crap off your record. You know, I think we can talk about that, and I think that's something that's reasonable, and I think that we can probably get a lot of support from our Republican colleagues who
That's what I
are
was going to say.
libertarian.
There's some far-right Republicans that understand if we can get these people off of the state's funding by way of penitentiaries, then we'll have more money to put in the budget for public aid and things of that nature. But at the same time, we're doing that, Gene and Shawn. We have to put into what my office has been working on for the last 2 sessions is jobs, and training programs for these individuals. If you look at my legislative package from the last session, there were a slew of bills that I filed, 6, and I think we filed 6 and 4 of them passed, all relating to rehabilitation and job training and trades so that these people can get jobs once we release them. Because if we release them and we don't have anything for them on the outside, then they're going to go right back into the revolving circle.
Actually, before I get to this one, Shawn, there was a question specifically for you. Will you start a women's caucus in the House?
We have several versions, little smaller versions. We have a women's health caucus. We don't just have the women's caucus, but sure, absolutely, I'd love to do something like that. We, Representative Hernandez recently talked about a subset of that and doing something for the mothers and working moms and all of that. So absolutely, women are going to have to start, we see now are taking a much more leadership role in politics nationally and of course statewide. We don't have far enough women in the House. So I would love to take the lead on something like that. I don't know who asked, but would love to. But you know, we have a women's health caucus that has been very, very active. And I'm sure we can expand to other areas.
Can I add this one small note? The Texas legislature as a whole is below the national average in number of women in the body. Is like less than 25%. But I want to say this: right now, the Democratic caucus is half female. The Republican caucus is now dropped, I think, below like 8%.
Are you aware of any bills that would change the way we elect or choose judges?
Well, the straight ticket bill was honestly, you know, we heard in kind of back rooms, that was really to change the way we elect our judges. That was solely to prevent what happened right here in Harris County this time around, where we got the 19 African American.
His pastor was mad his son lost.
Yes, and so those bills that do that is the one that just passed to eliminate straight ticket voting. We all know that most people do not know by name every single judge they vote for. Most people can't even name everyone on the commissioner's court. So that is the bill that did that. And there was even talk at one point about kind of shaving down the bill and making it solely specific for judges, for judicial races. I hope Senator Miles gets a lot of traction this time around with flipping it back the other way.
Now that the Democrats have all the judicial positions, I'm happy to just not elect judges anymore.
Lifetime.
There's always someone who carries a bill, one, to either make judicial races nonpartisan, or two, just not to elect judges. Most other states do not elect their judges, especially not on a partisan basis, because it's like, if you think about it, if you're a judge as a Democrat or Republican, you would adhere to a platform. There's a whole bunch of legal issues, like legal ethical issues with adhering to a platform, because you're not supposed to have made up your mind about ideas. But if you adhere to a platform, well, aren't you saying that you already believe in these things? So I don't know. I think Judge Engelhardt maybe has a follow-up question, but
Let me, before Judge, let me say this. As the former Vice Chair of Elections for the state of Texas, we're gonna be spending a lot more time defending the bills that we have on books now to protect what happened this past November. It ain't always about writing a bill to change things. A lot of time, our job is to protect the bills we have on the books. And I can assure you, although we don't know of any, I guarantee you they're working on a bunch of them right now. So we're going to be playing defense more so than offense on elections this cycle.
That's true.
You got it now? Yeah. Did I answer your question? All right, brother.
We're running towards the end, so this is my last question, and it'll allow you to do your in follow-up. And then anything left up here, I'll make sure y'all get, because there's some really good questions we just didn't get to, and some very specific ones on school finance. So, because this is a legislative preview, what would you consider a successful session when it is adjourned sine die?
If I had to pick one thing, that we change the public education formula. That we do what Gene and his interim committee talked about. We've identified the problems, we've identified what we want. Now we have to work together to implement and understand that we must fund public ed first before we can talk about vouchers and charters.
Yeah.
Public education in the state and a city like Houston, Texas, are the cornerstones of our communities. When you tear our schools down, you don't finance them properly, and they wither away, our communities wither away. Some of y'all are old enough in here to know Sharpstown has gone through a whole revitalization. You remember when our community was starting to crumble? It was around the same time they started introducing charter schools and vouchers. Public education is important. My kids went to private school, but I paid for it. If you want to send your kid to private school, pay for it. Don't take it off the backs of our children in public education. So if I had to pick one, public ed.
I agree. That's the priority that's already been said from our speaker-elect from the House is school finance. I like to drill down a little bit about what that looks like to me. So if I were to kind of wave my magic wand, I've already told you that would be funding our schools properly, but including in that school safety. And if I really got the icing on the cake, going a little bit further on mental health in Texas. I haven't touched on that tonight. Maybe I can come back another time. But I've got some stuff on that I'll share with you because it's very, very important. That's another component of school safety is addressing the mental health of our students, giving our teachers and our counselors tools and resources and preventing these types of issues, as well as suicide. Suicide prevention is very, very high in Texas now. The opioid crisis is not an epidemic quite yet in Texas, but I've got some bills on that. So I would say school finance, which encompasses school safety to me, and another version of public health, which includes our mental health.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that last session we financed, and made sure that I financed with UT. We're going to have 340 more mental health beds right there on the corner of McGregor and 288. We financed that. I made sure the finances was there. So we're going to have 340 more mental health beds right there.
And to that point, so, like what we were saying, we follow up. One of the issues of when I served on County Affairs Committee, and we heard a lot from Harris County Health and people from all over the country, all over the state, and the counties, very rural counties, talked about that even when we do have those beds, people don't know when they're full or not. So, yeah, it's still not enough, but a psych bed registry is something very simple. I filed that bill last session. I'm filing it again now. I think I may have pre-filed it already. I'm not sure. If not, it'll probably be Monday. But, and it's just a simple web-based registry where you can go online, or the medical providers would be able to go and see where the available beds are. We had people come in and testify for hours, you all, that said, I literally, let's say you have a child that's anorexic or is cutting, and you're trying to get them to a psych facility. and you've called all around Harris County, all of Houston, they say, well, I think we have a bed maybe in Dallas. That's after 14 hours or 2 days of calling, and you get there and it's gone. You know, we don't even have that. Again, I like to be prophetic. I believe we're going to look back in a decade and go, remember when there wasn't even a psych bed registry? Remember when people were just guessing where the beds were? Memorial Hermann, Southwest didn't know what Memorial Hermann in the medical center had. That should change. The suicide training and prevention. We've heard from rural counties and right here in Houston that the wait to see a psychiatrist, it may take you 5 or 6 months to get to talk to someone. And so we know our general practitioners are on the front line now. So one of the bills that I'm advancing this session is to require, our medical physicians to, as a requirement of their MCE training, to have training in recognizing the signs of suicide and suicide prevention. Your regular family physician should be able to recognize when you come in and if you're just sad or tired or if you really want to die by suicide the next day. I've done a lot of work on this. I've even changed my language. If you notice, I said die by suicide and not commit suicide. I've talked with the advocates in SACOs and they say, you don't commit cancer. You die from cancer. You die from suicide. It is a plague and a disease of your brain, just like anything else. So brain health, mental health, along with all that, we're seeing kids 10 years old now dying by suicide. I would have never in my life thought that. A girl I saw recently did the same thing from the bullying. All of these things. When I was in high school, I knew one person that, died by suicide. Now we're turning on the news, it's every day. I don't think we can look away from that. I think that's part of of the problem that we see with the violence in this country is mental health. So I'd like to see a little more movement on that, and I've got some legislation that I hope, again, as Senator Miles has pounded tonight, some things are not Democrat or Republican. Everyone has members in their family that suffer from whether it's cancer or epilepsy or glaucoma or sickle cell or brain disease. All of us are affected by that. So that would be my dream wish. Thanks.
A victory, the only thing, I don't want to beat this in the ground, but the only thing that matters to me is school finance reform. Because everything is connected to it. If you talk about a proper education, talk about pre-K funding, if you talk about having kids not be hungry because they can have a proper meal at school, you can talk about kids who have mental health issues who can actually see a counselor. If you're talking about keeping kids out of the criminal justice system because they have ways of treating it at school and dealing with it at school in a non-criminal way, non-judicial way, it's all tied back to having adequate schools. Texas in 2014 bounced at around the 43rd ranked state for public education in the nation. I think we're up to 39 now, so I guess that's an improvement. It's still sad. It's still incredibly sad, considered one of the wealthiest states in the entire nation, wealthier than many, many countries. But yet we can't seem to properly fund our education system.
Priorities.
To me, public education and school finance reform is the only thing that matters. I will, if that's what it takes, I will sacrifice every single one of my other bills for that to go through and for it to be done right. Because it's just so much of the state is tied up with our kids and our schools.
Final thoughts?
I'm more optimistic than my friend down at the other end of the table. I'm excited about going back to the 86th legislative session. I think we're going to get more traction, more movement, more bills. There's going to be a lot of good things that come out of this session. Don't get me wrong, they're going to be up to their old tricks. But as I stated earlier, you've got 3 experienced people up here that are loyal and dedicated to the Democratic way. And we're going to continue to work hard for you. I want to say thank you again for allowing me to be your senator. I'm going to say that one more time. I want to thank you for allowing me to be your senator. I really do take it as an honor and a privilege. And every time I push the button for a red or green, yes or no, I think about each and every one of you, and I look at the faces I'm looking at right now, and I know that I'm doing the right thing, and this is what you want me to do. So thank you for allowing me for being your senator. Let's have a great 86th legislative session. And please, come up and visit us. We get lonely up there. We do, we really do. Come up and visit us and tell us, make sure that we're on track and keep us accountable, okay? I love to see my constituents walk in the door.
Thank you. That was really going to be my cattle call, so to speak, for everyone, was to, not all of it, but just to come, to stay engaged. Most of us know all that those of us in this room are. So sometimes we are kind of preaching to the choir. You know, everyone who took the time to come here on this cold night cares. So what I like to say is, you know, pay it forward, each one bring one, each one teach one. Bring somebody sometimes to a meeting that isn't a part of this and ask them to join and get them to kind of follow this, follow all that what we're doing. I did a bill writing workshop recently with the National Organization for Women here in Houston. And we opened it up to everyone. You didn't have to be a member, and it was amazing. I showed them how the bills don't have to come from members of the lobby. People don't have to come and hand you a bill. Honestly, the majority of the ones, because I was a newer member, they didn't come to me that way. I'm now starting to have people hand me bills, and my staff's like, oh, she's already got, I don't know if she can do it now. She's done 32 of her own. I would write them on my iPhone. So be active as you are, but tell other people about it. And so that's something I would encourage you. If you have ideas, you guys threw out some, call me, you know, call us up, shoot us an email. We try to answer everyone. I'm also, on the note, I am optimistic because I really believe you all, it's just the only way we can kind of get something done. You have to believe and have similar faith. We have to be realist. So I'm very pragmatic about it, which is, Gene and I are both lawyers, so the eternal pragmatist comes from that profession. I'm pragmatic too, in the sense that when I file bills, I try to make them very, you know, narrow for what I think is going to work. Sometimes no good deed goes unpunished. The pre-K bill that I filed yesterday,
You think too much.
that's the lawyer in us. I was getting all this wonderful, yay, rah, 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 and I'm going to be on TV tonight talking about it. Do you know so many people wrote me and said, why didn't you add children of teachers? You didn't put that every child of a teacher should be eligible, not just economically, you know, the kids that are on free lunch, because teachers don't make enough money. And I said, well, okay, let me look at that. Well, there's 300 and something thousand, between 300 and 350,000 public school teachers in the state of Texas. So we have to look at to see now, drill down, is how many of them have kids in pre-K? I'm not opposed, but I was trying to be pragmatic as what I thought would really work. So the bill that I filed was a natural extension of that. But I will just say, follow what we're doing. As Senator Miles said, if you can't make the trip, just email, call, and again, bring some. But yeah, and then just know, I think certainly these two guys, you can look at their record, and they probably never took a bad vote, or if they did, it was for the right reason. I don't think they ever did. I don't feel bad about most of my.
Let's say that's true.
Yeah, let's say it's true. But you know, our hearts are in the right places. We're with you. We're on the front line, and get us more support. That's how it works. You don't have to be. I love Beto. You know, met him and hung out with him and supported him. I don't think we have to be that though to get you guys excited. And so bring some more people out, and that's how we're going to flip this state. Thank you so much. It's an honor.
I always appreciate being able to speak at Sharpstown Dems. You know, I've been here for a long time. I didn't tell you guys what some of the stuff I'm going to do.
Didn't you get your growth out of this, Sharpstown Dems?
What?
You grew out of this,
Yeah,
didn't
this is my hood.
They birthed you, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure you say that.
This is my district.
Yeah, they birthed you.
So some of the, I didn't say this during the main thing. So some of the big things I'm working on is we're going to have CPS Reform Part 2, mostly dealing with funding issues. I'm going to work a lot on juvenile justice reform. We're going to try to raise the juvenile jurisdiction. Any of you all who've been at Sharpstown Dems, you've heard me talk about this endlessly, so I'm not going to go on that. I'm going to work on stuff. I'm going to really try to get more counselors with schools. I'm going to try to get schools to stop filing criminal charges on kids.
Yes.
Like crap that when we were kids, like literally I know Shawn never got in trouble, so when Boris and I were kids, we would just get...
My mom was a teacher at
Yeah,
the school
see?
I went to. I
Told
didn't
you.
do too much. She was right up there.
So it's something that when we did, the crap that when we did it as kids, we would just get taken to the principal's office and might get detention, might get suspended, but we wouldn't get arrested and hauled to jail. Yeah, and Pops, whatever, okay? We're not doing Pops anymore, but that's cool. So those are some of the things I'm working on, but really, you know, if I have to end on something, I want to make sure that it's this. One, it's really good to win, isn't it? Yeah. It's really good to win. And let's do a lot more of that.
Yeah.
And the reason is this. For 2018 was just practice. 2018 is practice. The real game is 2020. Because guess what happens in 2020 before the election? The census. And guess what happens in the 2021 session? Redistricting. Democrats, we got screwed for a decade because the Republicans flipped every legislature in the country on the perfect year. And they got to redraw the lines in their favors. And one of the things that I'm really proud of all of y'all, everyone who worked this last election cycle, is the 12 seats that we picked up, the majority of those were in heavily gerrymandered districts. And we're like, so what? We'll take them anyways, right? And just think about what our elections will look like once we can undo some of that gerrymandering, okay? And so I just want to leave you all with this. 2020 is the big game. We've been preparing and practicing for it. We're going to go.
And just on that note, again, thank the three of you. I think Sharpstown is blessed that we have representatives and state senators that are Democrats. I think it's very much to also say that Sharpstown is now blessed with two Democratic congressional members, Lizzie Fletcher and Al Green. Mike Laster is a Democrat, so we have a Democratic city council member. And even though this is his building, Steve Raddick, we're coming for you in 2020. And on that note,
Judge. We didn't have a dog though. Let's not forget our new
oh,
county
we
judge.
love her.
Before we go, we have our port commissioner, who's a Democrat, from the Stelton branch in the House, who's ought to be the port chair.
But to Gene's point, 2020 starts now. The next general meeting of the Sharpstown Democrats will be at the Chinese Community Center on Saturday, January 26th at 10 a.m. We do begin the work for the 2020 election this year. Holly, you had an announcement? Trustee Villaseca had an announcement she wanted to make to invite y'all to a meeting.
Okay, can everybody hold on, please?
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for a couple of minutes here at the tail end of a wonderful panel. Thank you so much for all of your hard work, and thank you for making education a priority. This not just this session, but I know always. So thank you again. A couple of announcements. I have monthly meetings. I'm going to be sharing the information with Eric and Adrian so you guys can come. I have them at Paul Revere Middle School the second Tuesday of every month, right before our Thursday meeting, so I can give you guys updates on what's happening on the HISD front, and we can have some dialogue on what's happening, because there's been a lot that has been happening, and I'm looking forward to a brand new year. Another thing is that we're going to be having a community meeting regarding our superintendent search, which is going to be happening at Jane Long Middle School. It's going to be happening on Wednesday, January 16th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. during the day, and there's also going to be one in the evening at Paul Revere Middle School. There's going to be several scattered across the city, but Jane Long is right around the corner from here, and so I will be sending that information out so it can be plugged into your calendars. Thank you again, and I look forward to continuing to represent and fight for education. Thank you.
And on that note, thank you all very much for coming. This is a free venue, so can y'all please help put up